Hey guys, welcome back to Kitchen Court Cases, where we watch court in my kitchen. Let's go ahead and take a look at this TPO hearing, a husband versus a wife. And don't worry, it's got a guaranteed ruling, I promise.
To you quite as quickly as I would have hoped, but you will have my undivided attention moving forward. Mr. Powers, good day to you. Do you have, we have one witness for you in the waiting room, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. We will leave them there for the time being, but they can be brought in at any time. Were you intending to have your client as your first witness?
No, Your Honor. I was intending to call the witness that's in the waiting room as the first witness to get her out of here.
Okay. Very good. And let me get the petition pulled back up. I do have a few different screens I have to navigate between as we go. And while I'm doing that, I'll kind of give a roadmap to Mr. Nelson. But it is the petitioner's case, and they get to go first. That is because they have the burden of proof. If they don't present enough proof to receive the thing that they're asking for, a protective order, then it doesn't even get to you to decide what evidence to present in your case. And so their witnesses will testify one by one. When each of their witnesses finishes testifying, you'll have a chance to suggest questions to them. In these types of hearings, knowing that there are allegations of violence, typically I will serve as a filter or a go-between. And so you will kind of present those questions to the court, and I will ask the ones that are relevant or helpful. Understand that the parties typically don't agree about the facts of the case, and that's one of the reasons we're having the hearing in the first place. And so while I certainly respect those disagreements, hopefully you can be choosy about which things are best handled through questioning other witnesses and which things are best handled through giving your own testimony of the events as you experience them. Generally speaking, the questions that we focus on in these hearings are whether we have jurisdiction over the case, and that's simply a question of where the respondent lives, whether there have been acts of family violence committed, and whether this order might help prevent acts of family violence from occurring in the future. And so we try to focus on those issues, though we recognize that there are other layers and other things, facts and circumstances that surround these cases that can sometimes be relevant to answering those questions. So we are going to bring in our other witness from the, do we have them in a breakout room or the waiting room?
Are we going to have the opportunity to give a brief opening statement, Judge, or are we going to skip that?
You can do that now at this time. It looks like we may, while I was talking, we may have lost your witness from the waiting room.
It may be the Moto G-Go person that was also in the waiting room.
Yes.
The other person that was there was a witness for the position 6 and 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did your witness look like, Mr. Powers? Can you provide a brief description?
I have not seen her. Her name was Lana Aguilar.
Would it be all right if I ask your client for a brief description? We had someone in the waiting room who we tried to connect to audio and troubleshoot the connection with, and we were unsuccessful. So I think it may have been them.
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Nelson, what can you tell me about Ms. Aguilar's appearance so we can try to make an educated guess as to whether the person we were working with was them?
On March the 28th, I received a text from...
I'm sorry, let me stop you here. Do you know what Ms. Aguilar looks like?
She's Hispanic with brunette hair.
Okay, I think there's a good chance. Is this them? Ms. Nelson?
I don't see the picture.
Can you take your phone and swipe? Are you on a phone or a computer?
On a computer.
Do you have a little arrow? If you mouse over the screens, do you have a little arrow to click to the right to kind of see more screens?
Yeah.
Can you try that and see if you see something that says Moto G Go? Or I guess let me ask this.
Yeah, I think I see Moto.
Okay, so if we can get them to turn their camera back on, I'll at least have you look at them and confirm.
Yep, that's her.
Okay, very good. So we have the witness. That's a good start. We have not been able to hear them yet. Miss Aguilar, can you hear me? Can you nod your,
She can't hear you, Judge.
okay.
I was unable to connect with her, Judge. She's responsive in chat, but she has not been able to connect.
And it looked like she just logged out.
All right. So this would be the perfect time for your opening, Mr. Powers, if you would like to give us that roadmap. And then Mr. Nelson, you'll have the same opportunity thereafter, and we'll continue to work on the witness's connection.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Nelson, go ahead and mute yourself until I start asking you questions, okay? So, Your Honor, this is a lengthy marriage that has had a history of domestic violence from Mr. Nelson against Miss Nelson throughout the marriage. Miss Nelson purchased the home in question at 1230 Oak Knoll Court about 18 years ago. And it wasn't until 5 years ago that she put Mr. Nelson's name on the title. She also owns a 2012 Range Rover that he currently possesses the keys to. So on January 26th, Mr. Nelson, who has a problem with drugs and alcohol and has been inviting men into the home, or men and women into the home to do drugs and alcohol, got drunk, got high, and pulled a gun on Miss Nelson. She proceeded to get out of the room, call the police. The police arrived. She told them what happened. He denied it, and the police said, "This is your word against his without further evidence. We're not going to do anything here." And she said, "Well, this is my house." And they said, "It's his house too." And she said, "Well, I need my car keys. I need my car to leave." And he originally said, "I'll give her the car keys." And then he turned around and said, "You know what? No, I'm keeping the car." And the police said, "There's nothing that we can do here. Do you have a place to stay?" And so she left. She took an Uber and she went and found a safe place to stay away from this man. Fast forward, she's living somewhere else. He allows Miss Lana Aguilar and her boyfriend to move into the home. About 2 weeks ago, he got drunk or high and got into an argument with these two individuals, and he pulled that same gun on them and threatened them in the exact same way. And that's the testimony that we intend to get from Miss Aguilar here today. And so basically what we have here, Judge, is it's unfortunate that this man is sick and having a hard time, but you don't get to pull guns on your spouse in the home that they purchased without your assistance and keep that home. She needs her house back. She needs her car back. And she needs a court order to keep this man away from her, or he's going to harm her. Because the testimony here today is going to show that he is mentally unstable. Thank you, Judge.
All right, Mr. Nelson, opening statements are not evidence. What they are is a chance to sort of provide a brief roadmap for what you expect your side of the case or the evidence in general will show. You saw how he kind of presented that, and then what he will do is call a few witnesses to establish the facts that he asserts happened in his opening. So do you wish to make an opening statement at this time, understanding that you would still need to testify under oath if you intend to, make a statement that would be considered an evidence?
Sure. If I can make an opening statement, I'd like to.
Go ahead.
And the day of question with my wife, the only person that was, being belligerent and acting, very, she was kind of being like a little bit out of control in that day of question. There was no guns. There was no domestic violence. We have 4 police officers there, and they was trying to get her to control herself. And they were telling her, "You calm down." And then they asked her, "Could you please get your stuff? And could you please, leave the premises as soon as you can?" Because, the way she was just cursing and, being all belligerent. So as far as our home goes, my daughter, myself, and my wife. I did the walkthrough of my home. I didn't put my name on the home because we wanted to use her credit, my money. I was the first one in that house. I've been in that house just as long as she has. I've done all the work on that house. Whenever anything broke down, I fixed everything. I'm a maintenance tech, and the thing is, she's been using law enforcement to control me and threaten me, and she would say things that wasn't true all the time. Just she uses the police officers to manage my household. And as far as Miss Aguilar, I tried to have somebody to help me because she left me, closed my account, canceled my ATM card, and I had nothing. I have nowhere way to take care of myself. Well, these two people who are talking about drugs and alcohol, I caught them doing heroin in my room. This guy was passed out with his eyes rolling behind his head, and I told them to leave. And his big dog was viciously coming up on me as if the dog was going to attack me. And I told them, you have to get out of my house with that. And my wife don't even know these people. As soon as I asked them to leave, all of a sudden they have a friendship. My wife doesn't know anything about these people, never seen them before in her life. I met them through a friend. I didn't know them that well, but because of my state of mind, being heartbroken and my wife leaving me like that, I didn't make a good decision. I had no money, Judge. I needed help. And that's all I was trying to do was get help. And pretty much, as far as the truck is concerned, I'm the primary owner of the truck. The registration is in my name. June is my birthday. I don't understand what's going on. Everything got twisted around. I've been with this woman for 25 years of my life. She's always had jobs that were out of state. I practically raised my daughter myself. I had to be the father and the mother, and I was very responsible. And
well, for everybody today, the issues, even though a year feels like a long time, but the issues that are decided here are decided on a temporary basis. And so what I will ask in terms of the way that we proceed with the hearing, I'd like to receive evidence with a heavy focus on violence, threats of violence, intimidation, and things in that vein, so that a decision can be made about whether or not an order should issue. And then to the extent there are questions regarding the possession or disposal of property on a temporary basis, I'll address the parties individually after a ruling is made. So if an order, we don't need to talk about houses and cars and that sort of stuff until we know that we're issuing a protective order. And then if I decide that I am in fact extending this order 12 months, there will be some things I'll ask one side about, some things I'll ask both sides about, and maybe some things I don't ask either side about, but I just make a decision based on the information I have at my disposal. And so we'll go through that as best we can. We do have Mr. Powers as witness back in the waiting room. So we're going to take a swing at this and see if we get a better result. I feel like the mute sign is already a more promising start than where we were before. I've sent her a prompt to unmute.
Hello?
All right, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us. We are ready to begin with your portion of the hearing. It should be somewhat brief, but Mr. Powers is going to have some questions for you. And then after that, Mr. Nelson, if he has questions to suggest to the court, will have the opportunity to do so, and I may relay some of those questions to you as well. Can I have you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you swear any statements you make to the court will be the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You can put your hand down. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Lana Aguilar.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Powers, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Aguilar, do you know the respondent in this case, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Mr. Nelson?
We had lived with him for a short period of time in March.
And how did your living with Mr. Nelson come about?
A mutual friend of ours knew we had just had to move out of our place because our place was being sold. So he introduced us to Mr. Nelson, and we ended up paying Mr. Nelson to stay with him.
Did you know Miss Nelson, the petitioner in this case, prior to that?
Not prior to that, no.
At some point around 2 weeks ago, was there an incident with Mr. Nelson?
Yes, there was.
What happened?
We had just woke up at Mr. Nelson's home, and we were in the room that we were renting from him, and he knocked on our bedroom door, and I answered it, and I asked him what he wanted, and he said he wanted to speak to my boyfriend. So my boyfriend went out there, and I heard them like yelling, and Mr. Nelson was telling him to get the F out of his house. And he asked why, and he said because we left the door unlocked and we left the lights on, and he wasn't going to have that going on in his home. And he said, if I have to make you, I will make you get out of my house. And he went into his room, come out with a gun, and
Mr. Powers, is she frozen for you?
Yes, Judge. And as soon as she's unfrozen, I'll let her know that she needs to pick up where she left off.
I always try to pick one person to ask. There's about a 50% chance at any given time that they're frozen for me, and only for me. All right.
Ms.
So
Aguilar, I think
Mr.
you're
Powers
back.
is going to redirect you for where we lost you for a moment, but you appear to be back now.
okay.
So you had stated that he went into his room. What happened next?
He come out with a gun in his hand, and he told us to get the F out of his house.
Did he point the gun at you?
At my boyfriend, and I was in the doorway.
Since that occurrence, did Mr. Nelson offer your boyfriend money to not attend this hearing today? I believe she's frozen again, Judge. I think this is my last question, so hopefully we'll get through that. Yeah. Ms. Aguilar, Ms. Aguilar, did Mr. Nelson offer your boyfriend money for you both not to attend this hearing today?
Yes,
How much money?
$500.
No further questions, Judge.
All right.
Your Honor, I want to address, it appears that Mr. Nelson has someone in the room with him. Is the court aware of who's there with him?
I know they were providing him technical assistance earlier. I'll confirm that they were not intended to be called as a witness.
Thank you, Judge.
And your client does not have anyone with her that, you don't have any other witnesses besides potentially your client and Miss Aguilar, correct?
That's correct, Judge.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nelson, I've been trying to send you a prompt to unmute. Sometimes these things work, sometimes they don't. You'll have to click it so we can hear you. I want to confirm you don't have anybody in the room who you intend to testify on your behalf. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I knew that you had yesterday. I know you had to go to a different location just to get access to the hearing. So, and our court team typically will ask that question during check-in, but I wasn't around for that this morning. So, okay. Do you have questions that you think the court should ask Ms. Aguilar?
Yes, I do.
All right.
You say I pointed a gun at her husband. How did it look? What was it? What kind of gun?
All right, Miss Aguilar, how would you describe the weapon?
I couldn't describe it. He had it in his hand. He pointed it at him. I just know it was a pistol.
All right. Any other questions?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what this has to do with my wife and our domestic violence. Period.
There's a section of Georgia code that that essentially other bad acts can be used for the purpose of certain to establish bad acts in question. And so if he has evidence, for example, that you pointed a gun at one person during a situation, there are certain things like motive, intent, or opportunity that it could establish in respect to the case with your wife. So, for example, the fact that Ms. Aguilar says you have a gun or pointed a gun at her would, if nothing else, suggest that you have access to a gun. And in doing so, it would be relevant because it makes it more likely. The fact, like, for example, if she said, oh, he pointed a gun at me, and then you said, I don't even own a gun. I don't know how you could prove you don't own a gun, but if you could prove that, then that would negate that claim. Whereas in this situation, they can introduce this witness. What did or didn't happen with Ms. Aguilar does not govern whether this protective order issues or not, but it does help establish that you had ownership or access to a firearm.
I don't.
The claim of his case.
The next
thing hang on. I know I'm long-winded and I am pretty boring, especially with my tone of voice, but it's what we're stuck with. So, especially during allergy season. So, you'll have an opportunity to still question any other witnesses. You'll have an opportunity to still testify, and you can deny or refute or provide evidence in whatever form or fashion you see fit to any or all of the things that you've heard, or you can choose to remain silent. But in the meantime, we have the opportunity to question this witness. Do you have other questions that you think the court should ask of Ms. Aguilar? I think I've lost your audio again, Mr. Nelson. See if you can unmute for me again.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
I can. Do you have other questions for the witness?
Yes. I'm trying to figure out how I offered you $500 and I have no money. And when did this occur? You're not telling the truth.
Well, we're going to break that down into pieces. So, Ms. Aguilar, when did you receive this offer?
Yesterday.
Okay. How was it communicated to you?
In person.
And where were you physically located at the time this discussion happened?
In Lithonia at a mutual friend's.
All right. So those are her answers to that question. As to the other part of it, Mr. Nelson, I can say that it's always possible you made that offer without the intention of following through or without the ability to follow through, because there's not a timetable. Based on her testimony, there's not a timetable that's been placed upon it. Like, I'll put this $500 in my hand and your hand. That was not her testimony. So, do you have other questions for this witness?
I do not.
All right. Any redirect, Mr. Powers?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any reason this witness cannot be excused?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Aguilar, thank you for joining us, and thank you for working with us to resolve those technical issues. I know that took us a while, so we're grateful for your time today. You're free to log off and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Okay, thank you. You have a good day.
You as well. Bye-bye. All right, Mr. Powers, you can call your next witness.
I call Ms. Nelson.
All right, Ms. Nelson, I've sent you a prompt to unmute. I'll ask if you would that you please raise your right hand for me once you have unmuted. All right. Do you swear the statements you make to the court today will be the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. You can put your hand down, Mr. Powers.
So just to focus, as the court has instructed, on the domestic violence, Ms. Nelson, you are currently married to the respondent, is that correct?
Yes.
Has the respondent ever committed domestic violence or abuse against you?
Yes.
On how many occasions would you say?
I'll probably say 10 times, maybe more.
When was the first occurrence? What year?
2000, then 2007.
Okay, and has this occurred throughout your marriage?
Yes.
What was occurring with Mr. Nelson leading up to the events of January the 26th?
Like you said, that he was on one of those escapades. So basically, there was a person that was staying there by the name of Wayne Daniels. He was downstairs. And basically, 2 hours before I got off of work, James pulled a gun on me upstairs. I came downstairs. I was like, I'm not going to let this go. I called the cops. And basically, when they got there, it was 2 cops. And basically, he was just having a conversation with them. And they was basically telling me that I had to grab my items, I guess for a cool off period. And I did ask for the keys. And at first, he told the police that he would give me the keys. And then second, he stated that he wouldn't give the keys. And basically, I purchased this vehicle under my account, not in his name. I do have a receipt that I paid.
Ms. Nelson, we're not going to get into any of that yet, as
Okay.
the judge instructed. So my next question is, very briefly, you said 2 hours before you were supposed to get off work. What do you do for work?
I work for small business administration, government.
And what specifically do you do?
I'm a SBA underwriter.
And without elaborating any more, do you pay all the bills here?
Yes.
And so just to confirm, Mr. Nelson pulled the gun on you and you were forced to leave your home and your vehicle, correct?
Yes.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Nelson, do you have questions that you wish to suggest for this witness, understanding that you'll have a separate opportunity to testify yourself? I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson. See if you can click that prompt for me.
Can you hear me now, Judge?
I can.
Okay, please excuse it. I really don't know what I can say besides it's been the same thing with her over and over. She's trying to circumvent me from having to go through a divorce process, and she's trying to be really smart about it. That's why she's bringing up all this stuff. And to be frank with you, without a long conversation, the police didn't believe anything she had to say because they knew that it was not true. It was that simple. And they did tell her she had to leave. And as far as the gun, story that she's saying right now, please excuse me, because I do have pneumonia as I speak. So I'm not feeling really good because my lights were out, like I said. And it was so cold in my house, I have pneumonia in spots in my lungs right now.
Your Honor, is there a question or is Mr. Nelson going to be sworn in and testify at this time?
Yeah, let's try to get out what we can. If you need a break for any reason, you can ask for one. If you need to drink water, I always have to keep a cup with me or I start coughing. So, especially from about March to May. So, what questions would you like to suggest to the court for this witness?
You're talking to me, Your Honor?
Yes.
Well, I would like to know if I've been doing domestic violence against her and beating her and jumping on her. She where's any proof of that? And why would she be coming back to me if I'm jumping on her and beating her up and stuff, which has never happened?
Well, I'll ask, it's a bit of an argumentative question. I think there's some follow-up questions that are sort of built into that I have. So I'll start here. Ms. Nelson, you described this incident. When was the most recent incident that you can recall prior to the incident with the firearm?
There was another one that was done on October the 6th, 2022. I do have a picture that he hit me with the gun on the right temple of my eye. I do have a picture that I have in my phone that this occurred on October the 6th, 2022.
And what led up to that altercation?
On that altercation, we went to get some food from I think Kingsland Restaurant on Redan Road. However, it took a little bit longer than expected. Probably was in that restaurant getting both of us some food. Probably was in there about 40 or 45 minutes. And Mr. Nelson, when I got back in the truck, he got very belligerent and argumentative, kept pulling out in and out the gun. So basically when we got down to our subdivision and basically was going maybe 4 or 5 houses before, he reached out and hit me with the gun. I have a little gash over my eye, and this happened on October the 6th, 2022, and I do have a picture of it as well.
Okay. Did you have, and what's the next most recent incident that you can recall?
In January 2023, I wrote down the dates. I don't have the information from it, but sometime in January, maybe the beginning part, or maybe the second week, that Mr. Nelson put out a gun on me downstairs. We got into an argument. He pushed me in the tub, and he was gonna, he pulled out a gun on me. So
that's the one that was being discussed earlier, correct?
This is another incident.
So are you saying that it happened twice in January 2023?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm trying to go the other direction. So prior to October, do you recall what another recent incident would have been, or anything within the past year or so?
It's been numerous. I had them written down of the dates that he assaulted me. I don't have the information with me because I'm not there at the home. I'm at another residence. So I've been assaulted by him numerous times. And the reason being is that he charmed his way and say it never's going to happen again. He say sweet things or whatever and do the same thing over and over again. So this time I decided that I wasn't coming back, and I'm done, and I'm filing for a divorce.
So that hasn't happened yet, but it's in process, so to speak.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Nelson, I know I kind of took over the show here because I had questions that were coming to mind for me fairly quickly, but were there other questions you wanted to ask this witness?
Well, why wasn't the police called when all of these things were happening, as much as she likes to call law enforcement? I'm kind of baffled as to, if I just hit her with a gun in the head, why wasn't the
first
police?
Part was a question, the second part is statements, and really it's even argument beyond that. So let me try this. You described incidents from October and January, in addition to the other January incident that we've already talked about. Were the police called about the October incident?
No, the police wasn't called. At that time, I was really scared because, like, he's out of control. He loves to pull out guns, try to be in control. So at that particular time, I took a picture of it and sent it to a couple of people, showing this what happened. So when this did come back around, I did have proof.
All right. Did you did you call the police for the other incident? So you said you didn't call the police for either of those 2 incidents, just the other one in January.
The last one, the one that was in January the 23rd, he did pull out a gun and push me in the shower. I didn't call. I think that was the beginning of January. When this happened again on January the 26th, I was like, enough is enough. I had to leave in pajamas and slippers. It really like a 5-minute frame. Basically, get out the house. I just want you out. And then he told the other person that was staying there to get out as well.
All right.
So that's when I called the cops and say enough is enough.
Any other questions, Mr. Nelson?
No, sir.
All right. Any redirect, Mr. Powers?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Does the petitioner rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Very good. Mr. Nelson, if you wish to testify right now, understand that anything you say can be used against you in other court proceedings, as these proceedings are potentially being recorded. Is it your wish today that you would make a statement and give testimony?
Yes, sir.
All right, please raise your right hand for me. Do you swear the statements you make to the court today will be the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You can put your hand down. What would you like to tell us in regards to these allegations?
Well, what I can say is my wife, she's using every mean and these stories that they're unfounded. I just don't understand how someone could take abuse from another person like that, not call the police, be with this person for, I've been with her for 25 years. My wife is trying to paint a picture. She's called every relative I have to tell them all kinds of things, such as I'm this, I'm that, and I'm the other, all just slandering me. I'm facing, a very bad period in my life because I have stage 1. And right now, I don't have, a place, where I can go. I have no money. She's been gone for 4 months. I just don't understand how this just came out of the blue. I've just been trying to survive, Your Honor. And I haven't been trying to bother her or be violent in no way, because I see that has gotten me nowhere dealing with her. Because even when I wasn't violent, she was calling the police. She's done called the police 100 times, so I don't know what to do. I just don't do anything. I don't say anything. Basically, I just feel like all the things that she said are false. They're just false things.
Oh,
I didn't do any of those things to her. And all she's trying to do is take over the house, take over this, take over that, without going through the proper proceedings. And basically, that's all I have to say. I just want to get my health together and go on with my life and live. Right now, I'm really concerned about living. And basically, that's all I have to say, Your Honor. I mind my business. I don't mess with no one. And I don't even understand why she came up with all this stuff.
Mr. Powers, is there one particular line from the respondent statement that you'd like to follow up on?
I'd like to just put statements into the record very briefly about some of the things that he said in opening, if that's all right, Judge.
As part of argument? Or
I just want him to be on the record for when we file for her divorce. He's on the record having said these things.
Go ahead, make your record.
Very, very briefly. Mr. Nelson, you let Lana Aguilar and her boyfriend move in after your wife left the home, correct?
No, I did not.
Let's try to ask this slightly different. Did Miss Aguilar reside at the location while your wife resided at the location?
No, she didn't. The thing is, I didn't let them move in. I was just trying to they sleeping in their car. I was just trying to give them somewhere that they could sleep. Now, we started discussing, maybe, them renting a room or nothing, but they really didn't give me any money, So before anything could happen, I could see that it was just going in the wrong direction, period. I don't know if I answered. That's all I have to say about that.
Can you estimate the first time that she stayed at the home?
Ms. Aguilar?
Like put her head down for the night and slept at the home.
I don't remember. I don't know.
Well, I'm asking you to make your best good faith estimate. You could say, it was probably March. You could say it was in February. You could say it was last summer. Whatever your gut tells you immediately.
It was March.
Okay, so probably around March was the first time that she began to stay there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Nelson, you stated in your opening that you let these people in because Miss Nelson had taken all of the money. Are you changing that logic by saying that you didn't take any money from them?
No, they never paid. I only wanted help because I didn't have anything. So they never paid me rent or nothing like that. That never happened.
Two more questions, Judge. Mr. Nelson, you stated in your opening that Miss Aguilar and her boyfriend did not know Miss Nelson, correct?
No, they didn't know her.
And finally, you stated in your opening that you did in fact have to remove Miss Aguilar and her boyfriend from your home, correct?
I didn't have to remove them. I asked them to leave.
No further questions, Judge. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Nelson, you already said you weren't calling any witnesses. So what comes next is essentially closing argument. Mr. Powers, as the petitioner, you have the right to open and close. Would you like to reserve?
Yes, Judge.
All right. So, Mr. Nelson, what that means is you go first, and by law, he's allowed the last word. Closing argument is not evidence, just like opening statement is not evidence, but it's a chance to highlight portions of the case that you think are important or helpful to your cause. Would you like to make a closing statement?
For my closing statement, for one, there's no way in the world I could have offered those people $500 because I have not left from this. I have a witness. That I've been with this person for what, a whole 24 hours, 2 days, and I have not left. I'm all the way in Tequila, and I haven't left Tequila in 2 days. Okay. And I do have a witness for that, you know, and I'm just, what I'm trying to get at is this lady's not telling the truth, period. If she's lying about that, she's lying about something else. She's just not telling the truth. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, Mr. Powers.
Yeah, the person here who lacks credibility is not Miss Aguilar or Miss Nelson. It
My
is
apologies,
Mr.
Judge, for
Nelson.
interrupting, sir, but I need the petitioner to not have any phones in her hand while we're in court.
Did you hear that, Miss Nelson? Thank you. So he said in his opening statement that it was because she took all of the accounts away from him that he had to move these people in, and then the rental agreement just wasn't working out. And now suddenly that's changed. And I believe the court can tell, as I can tell, he has someone in the room with him that is clearly coaching him on what he's supposed to be saying. He says, well, why didn't she call the police? You know, why did she stay with you? These are all statements that somebody who's been through something like this before learned from potentially an attorney. So he's sitting here lying. We're at a preponderance of the evidence standard, Judge. It was uncontested that Miss Nelson purchased this home and later put his name on it. It's uncontested from the testimony that she purchased this vehicle and she was forced out of her home. We have her filing on March 24th for a protective order because this had happened and she needed to get back to her house but be safe in her house. And then after, she's asked for a protective order, but before he is served, these other people have the same incident with him where he pulled a gun. And so is it more likely than not that she's telling the truth about him pulling a gun? I think absolutely. And if this man is going to pull a gun on multiple people, there can be no doubt that without a court order, without this protection, she's likely to be in danger again. So we're asking for the court to issue the protective order for 12 months today.
Well, there was one line of this hearing that was almost remarkable, and how much evidence could be crammed into a single sentence. And
that was when Mr. Nelson said, even when I wasn't being violent, she would call the police. I don't have a gavel. If I did, I wouldn't bang it. People get to say what they get to say. This is their day in court. But that would have been a moment where we probably could have called things off. And so I am going to extend this order through April 18th, 2024. Now, it will order Mr. Nelson to stay away from the residence outlined in the ex parte order and stay 100 yards away from the petitioner and from her home, her work, and her school. To the extent he has access to any kind of bills or accounts, he is not to tamper with any kind of utilities or services to the home or to Miss Nelson personally. That instruction actually applies to both parties. I don't know what the situation is as far as joint bank accounts or whose names are on what bills as it relates to the household or life in general. But neither party should interfere with those, and they should be paid from joint funds. And I'm making notes as I talk. The respondent will be required to attend and complete family violence intervention and will work with our compliance officer, Mr. Ellis, to do so.
Lord.
He is prohibited from having or carrying firearms or seeking to purchase firearms or ammunition pursuant to federal law. And I think the main questions we would be discussing out of what remains, Ms. Nelson, I'm going to send you a prompt to unmute. You are still under oath. What vehicles are owned as part of this marriage, or by either party jointly or separately?
A 2003 BMW, 2010 S400 Mercedes, and a 2012 Range Rover. All vehicles have been paid in full by me. I purchased them.
But hang on, you had that information faster than anybody I've ever asked that question. I am used to, so it was an 03 BMW and then a 2010 what?
A 2010 S400 Mercedes vehicle,
What?
and a 2012 Range Rover truck.
And
All
so
three.
right now the Range Rover is with him and the other two are with you?
No, actually the Range Rover is at the sheriff's department because they grabbed the keys, the house keys and the truck keys. Investigator Conley called
He
on
serves the
Saturday.
orders,
Yeah. He
Okay.
said I have to pick it up.
So he has the Rover, you have the other two, and Mr. Nelson has no vehicle.
He has the Rover, the sheriff department, and the other two vehicles at the home. They not working at all.
They're not operational.
Right.
How realistic is that to change in the recent upcoming future?
The 2003 BMW, I believe that a battery is needed. Now the 2010 S400, it's not operational and it costs too much to get it fixed.
That car needs work, capital W work is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you believe that if a battery were installed in the 03 BMW that it would be operational?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Powers, I will need you to compile and provide to Ms. Goodman from our court team make, model, year, color, and license plate of all three of the vehicles, just out of an abundance of caution. The order would dictate that temporary possession of the Range Rover would remain with the petitioner for the duration of the order.
And it would authorize the respondent to essentially, I mean, obviously he can't come perform a battery installation if the BMW and the Mercedes are at the marital residence, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it will authorize the respondent to have that vehicle removed or towed by a professional third party if he chooses to obtain that vehicle, have work done, and get that vehicle operational so that he may use it while this order is pending. Does that make sense, Mr. Powers?
Yes, Judge. Just to be clear on what you need from me, the make, model, year, color, and license plate. Are you asking me to also prepare the order?
No, I will do the order. You've been very patient with us through all of this, so I will do that. I just some or all of those I know are blanks on the form. I just don't have the form in front of me, and so in case the sheriff had any questions about that, then I wanted to make sure that I had everything that might be needed on the form to fill in, so that they didn't call back after the fact, and then we have to chase down you or chase down your client. Mr. Nelson, if you intend to have the BMW towed, I will ask that you provide 48 hours notice. I'm going to say to Mr. Powers. So can we get information from you that we can exchange to him? And then what would be left for you to do at that point is to just contact your client and make sure that the vehicle is accessible for whatever tow truck or other thing would be coming.
That works for me, Judge.
Okay, and that way that can be done in a way that does not bring him to the property or near the property, because he can, he can meet elsewhere with the tower, supply them with a key, assuming that he has one, or if you've given your client the alert that they're coming for the vehicle. Today's Wednesday, so for example, if he were to say, "Oh, we're coming Friday," in some other week, then she can make the key available when the tow truck comes, so they can, put it in whatever gear they need and move it accordingly.
Your Honor, would you like me to provide him my cell phone or my business line now? He stated previously that he doesn't have an email or anything like that.
That's a good catch. Yes, please.
Mr. Nelson, are you ready to take down my business phone number?
Go ahead.
706